Good evening, friends. We start tonight as President Trump winds down his first trip to Asia. On Saturday, the president briefly greeted Russian President Vladimir Putin at the ASEAN Summit in Vietnam. The president said he takes President Putin at his word that the Russians did not meddle in the 2016 election, despite protests from the American intelligence community. Meanwhile, the president continued to take aim at North Korea, this time implying Kim Jong-un was short and fat in response to Un calling Trump old. While in the Philippines, Trump continued to outline his vision for the political and economic future of the Pacific Rim nations.
We want our partners in the region to be strong, independent, and prosperous, in control of their own destinies, and satellites to no one. These are the principles behind our vision for a free and open Indo-Pacific.
The president also appeared to have smoothed over his relationship with the Philippines' Duterte. President Trump did not mention Duterte's human rights abuses and appeared to have forgotten the spat he had with the Filipino president earlier in his administration. For more on this trip, how do we judge it? Let's turn to Surabh Gupta, International Relations Specialist at the Institute for China-American Studies. Surabh, nice to have you with us tonight. The president, let's start with the latter part of his trip. He did not bring up any human rights abuses in the Philippines. What do you make of that?
President Trump has stayed consistent in his messaging on this trip. He has focused on the North Korea issue, on isolating Kim Jong-un, and he has talked about the big bilateral trade deficits that he suffers with Asian countries, and he wants that rectified. Beyond that, he has gone out of his way to, I would even say, ingratiate himself with his hosts, because he sees that it's important to develop good personal relations with these leaders. And therefore, he has not touched on some of these sensitive points with his hosts. I frankly give him credit for that. But yes, this is a big issue. And I assume that he might have raised this privately and perhaps in a pro forma context, but it's not a matter on which he is hung up and is going to create an issue with President Duterte.
Well, what I find interesting here about North Korea is that certainly the president spoke to all of the allies about North Korea on this trip, but he also had some called elementary back and forth with Kim Jong-un. What do you make of that? The guy from the United States was the same guy that went overseas.
It is, but I thought this time around, yes, it was, of course, it was a little insulting, but it was in response to what Kim Jong-un said. And there was a degree of levity to that, and he left it at that. I actually have felt that he has remained mostly scripted, and he has showed a fairly good temperament on this trip. It's been a long one, a grueling one, and I think he will come out of it with a good deal of credit.
It was hard not to notice this, that the body language between President Putin and President Trump was much different than it was with previous presidents, such as President Obama. And former intel people, such as Brennan and Clapper, are criticizing President Trump, saying he's being gamed by Putin. What about this back and forth? I mean, and let's make sure our audience knows that North Korea borders Russia. If we get into it with North Korea, there's no way we're going to avoid getting along with the Russians on this. What do you make of that?
I think all the people who are carping about Trump and his relationship with Putin are offline, are really not helping the cause. Russia and the United States are UN Security Council members. They share vital interests and many common interests on many important global issues. It is important that Russia and the United States work and find a way to find solutions to global problems. President Putin flew 20 hours to speak to Mr. Trump in Da Nang, and for that, I think people should be paying a greater degree of, should be showing a greater degree of respect rather than carping about it. At the end of the day, it's important to have important personal relations with these senior leaders, and I think Trump is doing it the right way.
What about China and trade deals? I mean, the rhetoric on the campaign trail and the niceties that this president put out to Xi Jinping were a lot different.
Yes, that's true. I mean, Trump, the campaigner, and Trump, the president, have been completely different characters in China. I would say, though, in China that what he reached out for were commercial deals, almost $250 billion of commercial deals, while many of the hard trade and economic market access issues, there will be a lot of headbutting over these. And I think the Chinese understand this and are willing to some extent play ball with the United States, so long as the United States does not take WTO non-compliant actions. But over and beyond this, the disquieting factor is that Trump ruled out U.S. participation in any large multilateral trade deal. And
yeah, he wants to do bilateral trade deals, and he made that offer quite a bit. No question about that.
That's true.
Saurabh Gupta, always great to have you with us. Thank you. I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you. Thank you.
In other news, the president is calling for changes to the Republican tax plans by the House and Senate leaders. President Trump wants the top rate to be cut to 35% and is calling for the repeal of Obamacare's individual mandate. The final details of the tax plan hinge on agreement between the administration and the Republicans in the House and Senate, no doubt about that. The kind of agreement that they were not able to materialize during the fight to repeal and replace Obamacare. For more on this, we turn to conservative commentator Dr. Gina Loudon. Gina, thanks for being here tonight. All of a sudden, Donald Trump is talking about throwing a 4% cut to the wealthiest in this country. How's this going to play? The Democrats will say no to it, but will it galvanize Republicans?
Ed, I think that most Americans understand that the job creators in this country, the more we tax them, the less jobs we have. It's very simple math. It's economics 101, and this president understands it perhaps better than anyone who's voting on it because he has been in the business of operating companies his entire life. So it makes sense to me.
So how does that, but wait a minute, how does that justify cutting 4.6% for the top taxpayers in this country, the top income earners in this country? And this all of a sudden comes out of nowhere. He said before that the wealthiest people may have to pay more. That's not the case with his latest proposal.
Well, they'll still pay more. By natural default, they'll pay more no matter what. I think most Americans, and frankly, Ed, probably most Trump voters, were hoping for something more flat in terms of taxation, something completely simple. I mean, I do love the idea of cutting our tax returns down to mere postcard size, as they've been deemed. I like the idea of only 4 brackets, better than 7 brackets. But when it comes right down to it, I think most Americans were hoping for a flatter, more fair tax that was across the board, because otherwise we're talking about redistribution of wealth, and most people who understand economics understand that is not healthy for an economy.
Well, no one seems to understand exactly what it's going to do to the debt and deficit, going to add another $1.5 trillion unless all of these wealthy folks who get the tax breaks throw it back into the economy and corporations hire. And that's where, so to speak, the voodoo economics comes into all of this. That's not an absolute, that's a theory. So do you believe that the middle class and small businesses will not get gamed in this process and that they will get what the president's been promising all along?
100%, Ed. If, again, talking basic economics, the economy, the things that this president has done with zero support from the swamp in terms of reducing regulations, bringing business back to America, just the simple changes he's made to try and aid people with the catastrophe that was Obamacare.
Is the middle class going to get the break the president's been talking about?
They're going to get it, and here's why. Because our economy is in better shape than it's been in decades, and it will continue to be in better shape when we flatten out our tax system and make it so that businesses can thrive and corporations can produce jobs, because that's what makes an economy thrive. So any sort of conversation about deficits is not going to be relevant once it's all enacted.
Well, that's what Dick Cheney said. Deficits don't matter. One final point I want to make with you. This is almost the plan that's coming out for the House and the Senate, excluding the Democrats. Can all of the Republicans get on board for something? They have the votes. They can do it if they get everybody on the same page. Do you think they'll actually do that?
They better, because America voted for them to do it. And if they don't do it, Ed, they will be looking at trouble in 2018. There's no question about it. And this blame will not fall on the president's desk. This will fall on the Congress and the Senate, and so they better.
Okay. Dr. Gina Loudon, always great to have you with us. Thank you. So they'll
always
be
great
compromised.
To be with you.
All right. President Trump has nominated Alex Azar as the new Secretary of Health and Human Services. Azar is a former pharmaceutical company executive and currently runs a consulting firm. Azar has supported Republican efforts to repeal and replace Obamacare, and the president tweeted that he believes Azar will work towards better health care and to bring down drug prices. The position of Secretary of Health and Human Services was vacated earlier this year by Tom Price back in September after news broke that he wasted more than $1 million in taxpayer money on private jets. Republican Senate candidate, Alabama Senator Roy Moore, the judge, is facing increased pressure to withdraw from the race over allegations of sexual misconduct. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell was short and to the point. He believes the women accusing Moore.
Or do you believe these allegations to be true?
I believe the women, yes.
Senator Cory Gardner of Colorado says Moore should be expelled from the Senate if he's elected. Earlier today, another accusation came out against Moore. Beverly Young Nelson claims she was assaulted in the 70s by Roy Moore.
I continued to struggle. I was determined that I was not going to allow him to force me to have sex with him. I was terrified. He was also trying to pull my shirt off. I thought that he was going to rape me.
Moore says that he will sue the Washington Post for reporting on the story, while his wife says that all these accusations are just a witch hunt. For more on the Alabama Senate race, we're joined tonight by LaDawn Jones, former Georgia State Representative and prosecuting attorney. LaDawn, thank you for joining us tonight. These are just anguishing accounts that we're getting from women who claim that this happened to them. And not to take Roy Moore's side of it, but how credible are these accusations? Because there is no legal action, at least not yet. This is really all up to the voters at this point. Your take on this?
So voters may look at it one way or the other. So the credibility comes because these four separate women who did not know each other, did not know each other's account, all spoke to the Washington Post and gave their sides of the story. And in light of what has been going on with Harvey Weinstein around the country and the outcry for sexual assault, many voters may believe him. However, these same voters who have supported him all of these years after he was removed twice from the Supreme Court may still want to follow him and believe him more than these women.
You know, that's a big thing in Alabama. He's got quite a bit of support. People are saying that he's run for public office in the past, and none of these accusations or allegations have come up in the past. What do you make of the timing of that? I mean, that's the campaign's defense of Roy Moore right now.
So, you know, running for statewide office is not done by a lot of people, and he's successfully done it several times, and so it's likely that he could do it again. And so they wonder, why have these women not come out before in all of his other statewide runs? But as people have said, and as these women have said even today in a press release, that they realized because he's getting so big, they had to finally speak out. It was on their heart.
What should the Republicans do if he gets elected? It's been suggested by the senator from Colorado who is managing the Senate re-election campaigns that they should just evict him and kick him out, expel him out of the Senate if he wins. So do you think that that would have big political ramifications? I mean, it's pretty clear that none of the Republican senators want anything to do with this guy. They don't want to go home and have to defend someone who's got these kinds of allegations. I mean, is the election immaterial at this point on the way they stand on it?
You know, Mitch McConnell has some very strong language for him to be removed. For him to actually be removed, it would take 2/3 votes of the other senators to say that they actually want him out. The Republicans don't have 2/3 votes, but maybe the Democrats would join with them. This has happened a few times, only 15 times in American history, and 14 of those came from removals from Confederate soldiers, so who were also in the Senate. So it could happen, although very unlikely.
Are we witnessing a sea change in America when it comes to sexual harassment and dealing with it and understanding exactly what the severity of it is. I mean, it's not just Hollywood, it's politics, but it's also in business. Do you think that this is a defining moment in America?
This certainly seems like a tipping point, you know, and I don't know if the kickoff came because of the allegation against President Trump or if these are all related to Bill Cosby or Harvey Weinstein, but we have certainly gone over a cliff. And even as a woman who has been in a number of different positions, these questions, the hashtag Me Too has made me take a step back and realize what has happened to me over time. And I think you're going to hear a whole lot more women coming up and speaking up. And I don't know what men who have maybe been a part of this, what they should do at this point, but they certainly should start thinking about it.
LaDawn Jones, always a pleasure to have you with us. Thank you. I appreciate your time tonight. A magnitude 7.3 earthquake in the northern border region between Iraq and Iran has left at least 400 people dead. Tremors were felt in both Tehran and Baghdad at about 9:20 p.m. on Sunday. In Iran, almost 7,000 people were left injured and 70,000 are currently homeless. Over 500 people are injured in Iraq. Rescue efforts are underway in the northern provinces of both nations. This is the most serious earthquake to hit the region since the magnitude of 6.6 struck Iran in December of 2009, killing 30,000 people. Europe is in the process of forming a pro-European army involving 23 European Union members. All of the countries have signed a new joint defense pact called PESCO. France and Germany are firmly behind the agreement. RT's Peter Oliver has the latest tonight.
Permanent Security Cooperation, or PESCO, is essentially, in layman's terms, a military Schengen agreement. It would allow the free movement across borders, across national borders, of military hardware and personnel without them having to be stopped, to be checked. Its architects say it's been drawn up in response to the threats posed by terror organizations and by Russia. It is worth noting, though, that two of the big boys at the European table in France and Germany have very different ideas about how they see PESCO operating in reality. France, well, they say that they want it to be a much smaller force, a much more targeted force that fits with current French military operations that are underway. Whereas Germany, here in Berlin, they're saying it should be a more all-encompassing group, which its critics have said could make it less effective. Now, the whole idea behind PESCO and what it may lead to, a European army, were expedited. Talks on these were expedited following the vote in 2016 by the United Kingdom to say that they were going to leave the European Union. The UK had long been an opponent of an EU army. We're expecting now to hear from Jens Stoltenberg, the NATO Secretary General, a little later on to find out what he has to say about what Federica Mogherini, the EU foreign minister in all intents and purposes, says is a historic day when it comes to European defence.
This network, RT America, has complied with an order from the United States Department of Justice. It happened today as this network is registered as a foreign agent. The Committee to Protect Journalists is calling this a troubling precedent. The Foreign Agents Registration Act, or FARA as it's known, was enacted back in 1938 to deal with Nazi propaganda. Really? The act is being selectively applied to RT to put pressure on perspectives some people in the government, especially Democrats, would rather not hear. Now, this is coming from, I believe, Democratic senators such as Jeanne Shaheen and A.B. Klobuchar, who supported Hillary Clinton to the tilt and just want to retaliate against the Trump presidency. That's my opinion. No employee, and it should be pointed out that no employee from RT has ever been invited to testify under oath on Capitol Hill. I asked tonight, where's the fairness? Because Google and Facebook testified openly just within the last 10 days that RT had a minimal footprint in social media leading up to the election. Despite unfair pressure, this network will continue to operate as usual, and I am proud to do the news on RT America. And this news flash tonight, Donald Trump is still the President of the United States, and as I call it, Hillary Clinton is still the big loser. But there are issues of content and issues that are bothering those in the United States Senate who have got a tremendous amount of power, who shared their views with the Justice Department. And since FARA is not utilized very much, they thought, I guess this was the perfect time to slap RT America because of the outcome of the election, when meddling has not been absolutely proven by the Russians, or to what extent, if any, at all? For more on this, we go to Chris Chambers tonight, journalism professor at Georgetown University. Mr. Chambers, it is a pleasure to have you. And one more comment I want to make. I think, and I speak for myself and no other employees, but I feel that this is somewhat of a part of intimidation on the part of the American government to go after the truth. They may not like what we say, but we don't have sponsors, we don't have to run commercials, and we don't kowtow to corporations if they don't like the content that we do. We're about both sides of the story and being fair. And this is the frustrating thing, is that no one in Congress has pointed to any stories that we have done that are not journalistically based, that are not fair to the viewer. So, Mr. Chambers, if you could, explain FARA, F-A-R-A, to our audience tonight and tell our viewers exactly what this means.
Well, it was enacted in 1938 basically to, again, stop Nazi propaganda. I mean, that's the crazy and ironic thing about this. I mean, it was done because a lot of public relations people, the Ivy Lee, a guy who's known as the father of American public relations and advertising, was hired by the German government because Adolf Hitler wanted to know how he could sell what was going on in Germany to basically an isolationist public in the United States, to basically keep America isolationist or make it anti-Britain or something like that. And so it was, but it's really a disclosure regime. It's a transparency thing. It's not really enforcing anything on you unless you do not register. And herein, putting it on a media outlet is unprecedented. It is, and here's the ironic thing. It's not the government coming at you with full fangs and claws. It's the government coming at you like a weasel. There's a difference between a lion coming after you with full fangs and claws and a weasel coming after you through the back door. And this is basically backdoor censorship.
What kind of action would have to take place to constitute a move like this? You explained the Nazis, but this is very rarely used.
Oh, very rarely. I mean, yeah, I think it's been used maybe 20 times in the last 70 years. I mean, 20 times in 70 years. It's basically you register as a lobbyist or some other organization that is supposedly speaking for another country and another country's best interest. It has never been used against a media outlet. Certainly never used against a Google or a Facebook or a NBC or a CBS. So it's basically just, like you register with the Securities Exchange Commission when you want to offer stock, that kind of a thing. But
Professor,
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, let's talk about content for a moment. One of the frustrations our employees have is that we've never been told what material they're not happy with. We get called propaganda by the mainstream media, and the American people believe it because that's what they hear. But if you get into the devil in the detail of what's reported, I mean, when the kids in Flint, Michigan can't drink the water, that's not propaganda. When people are dying because of airstrikes in Aleppo and we're the only network there, you can't spin that. I mean, bombs are dropping and innocent people are getting killed. So we've never been told by the United States Congress, nor have we ever been given the opportunity to explain how we cover things globally. Isn't that somewhat unfair? And I'm not trying to make this a leading question, but you can see the frustration that some of us have.
Well, I mean, that's why, Ed, I said it was basically the weasel coming after you through the back door rather than the lion coming for your face. I mean, it doesn't, I mean, RT America, especially because it's the RT footprint in America, has the same First Amendment rights as, Comcast Universal does with NBC. I mean, but they can't infringe on those rights without doing a backdoor to RT because they don't like the content. I mean, it's clear that they don't like the content. If it's a problem with a foreign media outlet, why isn't it done to the BBC? Why isn't it done to China National Television or the Japanese or any number of media outlets that say the Saudis might contribute to?
And they talk about funding of our network coming from the Russian Federation. The funding of the BBC comes from their Defense Department.
Exactly.
Mr. Chambers, a pleasure. Thank you. I appreciate you being on the program tonight. On a lighter note, acclaimed Russian maestro Valery Gergiev is drawing crowds from around the world to his Minsky Orchestra. The orchestra is performing tonight at the National Cathedral in Washington. Our Manila Chan is there to tell us more about this very special concert. Manila?
Hi there, Ed. Yes, call it brokering peace one note at a time. This concert happening right behind me here at the National Cathedral is being dubbed the Concert of Unity, aimed at rapprochement between U.S. and Russia relations. Now, Valery Gergiev, the maestro, he is often called Russia's secret weapon because he has this knack of bringing people together from all walks of life in every city that he visits. And now, speaking of cities, he is wrapping up a 13-city tour between the U.S. and Canada with shows here in Washington and later this week in New York City. Now, take a listen to what the piano virtuoso inside Denis Matsuev had to say about cooperation between American and Russian musicians.
Each concert is sold out. Each concert, standing ovation. We have a great success, and I love American audience. I love very much American orchestras. I play a lot of time with the greatest orchestras.
Now, Ed, as we know, current relations between the U.S. and Russia on the political spectrum are a little more tense than what they were just a few months ago. But show organizers here say this is not about politics.
This is not a political event. This is an event of cultural cooperation and dialogue. And I am honored to present this event with a great artist, Maestro Valery Gergiev, virtuoso Denis Matsuev, the Mariinsky Orchestra, the Washington National Cathedral Choir, organ, field bells. The artists of the world have a great lesson to teach us.
All right, Ed, so the show organizers, the Washington Performing Arts Society, they dare to cross those lines between any kind of political tension to bring about the arts and bring people together within the community, Ed. Great show happening right now.
Thank you, Manila. Talented people knowing two countries can get along. Thank you. And they do it through music and talent like that. That's at the Washington Cathedral tonight. And that is our news this evening. Follow me on Twitter at News with Ed. Like me on the Facebook page, WeGotEd.com. I'm Ed Shultz reporting from Miami. We'll see you back here tomorrow night. Thanks for watching.